Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're really jumping into the deep end of entrepreneurship, specifically how you actually launch a project. You've provided some really interesting sources, and our job, as always, is to unpack all that,
Yep,
cut through the noise, and get to the core insights for you.
exactly. We're looking at the whole entrepreneurial journey, from that very first spark, that idea, all the way through to, well, keeping it going. Sustained growth, management. It's pretty comprehensive looking at the practical steps.
Yeah.
The sources focus a bit on cooling and air conditioning management as an example.
Right.
But honestly, the insights, they apply to pretty much any new business you might think of.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting, like right off the bat. Our sources kick off with this analogy. Launching a startup is like jumping from a height
Yeah.
and having to assemble the components of a rescue plane before you hit the ground.
Wow.
Yeah. It's quite the image, isn't it?
It really tells you this
Yeah.
isn't just about having a great idea, is it?
Sure.
Not at all. It immediately signals, the critical need for really careful planning, risk management, and flexibility, speed. Every entrepreneur gets that. That first phase, it's a race against time, against uncertainty.
Race to build the plane midair.
Pretty much. So our deep dive today, it's about guiding you through those stages, those strategies, how to navigate that leap, hopefully successfully.
Okay, let's unpack that journey then. Assemble that plane. Our sources lay out a pretty clear path, starting, like you said, with that initial idea spark.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through the core stages, let's say for a project like the cooling example, but maybe any project, really? What are those must-go-through stages?
Certainly. The material points to 9 key stages. Makes sense to break it down. First, it is all about finding an investment idea, something that fits, what you're interested in. Often using techniques like design thinking, that human-centered approach, or maybe Scamper, which is more of a. And the aggregation strategy is mentioned as a fascinating example. Combining multiple things into one. Think smartphones.
Right. They swallowed up calculators, cameras, music players.
Exactly. From dozens of devices down to one. So that's stage 1, finding that core idea.
So validating that spark.
Yeah.
Got it. What's the very next hurdle? You've got the idea. Now what?
Right. Second, you dive into a really thorough feasibility study. This means looking at it from all angles. Marketing, technical stuff, financials, operations. Can this actually work? What will it cost?
Okay, reality check time.
Pretty much. Then third, you've got to name and register your project. This is crucial. Protecting your intellectual property, getting it official.
Seems like a lot of groundwork before you even, open the doors. What comes after the legal stuff? Securing the name and all that.
Yeah, it is groundwork. Next, step 4 is figuring out your financial resources. How much cash do you actually need? Where can you get it? Funding sources.
Money matters.
Always. Fifth, you define the project structure. Who does what? What are the roles, the responsibilities? How does the team connect? Then, following that, you actually start getting the physical stuff together. Acquiring the necessary equipment and tools. Finding the right location. Buying what you need to operate.
Okay, so setting up the workshop, essentially. Or the office. What happens when all those pieces are hopefully in place?
Well, that leads to stage 7, the actual project launch. Go time. You start executing your plan, your timeline. You start promoting whatever it is you're offering.
The big moment.
It is, but it doesn't stop there. After launch, stage 8 is all about performance evaluation, constantly looking at what worked, what didn't, learning from successes and failures to make improvement.
Continuous improvement.
Exactly. And finally, stage 9, the material emphasizes expansion and growth. Looking ahead, how can you increase production? Enter new markets, develop new products or services. Always thinking bigger.
So yeah, definitely not a straight line. It's a cycle, it sounds like. Dynamic. And the sources even compare this whole entrepreneurial journey to a human life cycle.
Yeah.
How does that analogy play out? What does it show us?
That's right. The life cycle analogy, it really helps visualize it. It starts with establishment. This is like the birth of the idea.
Yeah.
You're gathering resources, you're testing, developing the concept, often using an MVP, a minimum viable product. We can circle back to that.
Like a baby learning to walk.
Sort of, yeah, learning the basic skills. Then after that initial setup,
What's next? Toddler phase.
maybe. Next comes the launch phase. The idea goes live, you start seeing some revenue, maybe just modest at first. Now, this is a really critical period. Economists sometimes call it the valley of death.
Ooh, sounds ominous. Why?
Because the probability of failure here is, well, it's high, really high. The sources really stress you need constant evaluation, you need guidance, maybe mentors to get through it.
Surviving the valley of death. Okay. What happens if a business does make it through that tricky phase?
Good question. If you're successful there, you enter the growth phase. Things start to solidify. Policies get clearer. Profits hopefully rise. You invest more in marketing and development.
Kind of like the teenage years or young adulthood. Growing stronger.
Yeah, that fits. It requires strength, patience. And then eventually there's the decline phase. Growth might slow down, plateau.
Okay, the inevitable slowdown.
Well, here's the interesting part. Unlike a human life, the material points out this isn't automatically the end for a business. The key insight is you can make better life choices, as they put it. Meaning you can add new features, enter new markets, maybe even pursue a kind of new birth with strategic changes, extend that growth phase, or start a whole new cycle.
So it's about being proactive, not just waiting for decline, but maybe reinventing.
Exactly. It requires that proactive mindset. Don't just react when things slow down.
That human life cycle analogy is, it's brilliant. Really gives you that long game perspective. The need for constant evolution. Now, setting that foundation often means dealing with, let's face it, bureaucracy, regulations. Your sources dive into how Saudi Arabia has tried to streamline this. What's the takeaway there for entrepreneurs anywhere?
Right. While the specifics tie into their Saudi Vision 2030, which has this big goal of boosting small and medium enterprises, SMEs, contribution to GDP quite significantly.
From 20% to 35%, I think?
That's the target, yeah. But the universal lesson here is the huge value of having a streamlined, government-backed support system, making it easier for entrepreneurs. So to do this, their authority, Mansha'at, set up the Saudi Business Center. Think of it like a one-stop shop. It brings together, I think, over 7 different government bodies under one roof, offering hundreds of services.
Wow, that sounds incredibly helpful, instead of running all over town.
Precisely. It simplifies things enormously.
So thinking universally again, for any entrepreneur, anywhere, what are the key types of steps involved in getting registered systematically, generally speaking?
Well, the process they describe is pretty structured, and it translates generally. First, you have to check the establishment conditions. Does your business activity fit the rules? Are there specific requirements? Classifications. Then you choose your legal form. Is it going to be an LLC, a limited liability company, or maybe a public joint stock company, a personal company? This often needs legal advice.
Getting the legal structure right from the start. Okay, what's next on that admin checklist?
Next up is the actual company registration, submitting the paperwork. Articles of association, commercial registration certificate, things like that. Then, crucially, you need to obtain all the necessary licenses. This varies wildly, right? Health permits, environmental ones, industry-specific stuff.
Yeah, it depends on what you're doing.
Totally. Then you register with official bodies, Chamber of Commerce, tax authorities, social insurance, getting into the system. Insurance is another key step, covering your property, maybe medical for employees, liability.
Cover your bases.
You have to. And finally, ensuring compliance with all the legislation and regulations, environmental rules, health codes, maybe e-commerce laws. Again, expert legal advice is often a very good idea here.
Okay, that covers the paperwork side. But beyond the legalities where you physically set up, that seems huge. The sources say it's one of the most critical factors, success or failure. What's the thinking on picking the right spot?
Oh, absolutely critical. Your location basically dictates who can reach you, how you deliver your service. Now, the criteria do vary. As you mentioned, an e-commerce project might not need a prime retail spot, like, say, that cooling and air conditioning repair shop example would.
Right.
But some general criteria apply to most physical businesses. You definitely need to be near your target market or customers. Is there a big enough pool of potential clients nearby?
Makes sense. Be where the customers are. What else matters for a physical location?
You have to think about your competitors. Where are they? Can you find a spot that gives you an edge? Maybe better quality, maybe price, maybe just convenience. And ease of access is just paramount. Can people find you easily? Is it reachable? Near public transport? And importantly these days, is it listed correctly on things like Google Maps?
Don't underestimate the power of maps.
Definitely not. Then there's the availability of facilities and support services, reliable electricity, water, simple things, but vital. Even external factors like, is there parking? Is your equipment protected from direct sun, especially if it's sensitive?
Little things that add up.
They really do. And finally, something maybe overlooked. The relationship with your landlord. Leases are long-term commitments. The sources actually advise researching the landlord's reputation, having a lawyer check the contract. A bad landlord can cause serious headaches.
That's a really practical point. Okay, initial setup is clearly vital. But you're not alone out there. What about tapping into the wider support system, especially in places like the Saudi example that are actively trying to help entrepreneurs?
Yeah, this is pivotal, and that push to empower SMEs is a great model. So entities like the General Authority for Small and Medium Enterprises, Monchat, they play the central role. They offer programs, initiatives, they run business support centers, they help connect you with the right government agencies, they even organize sessions with successful entrepreneurs, inspiring stories, practical advice, discussion forums with experienced consultants.
Building that community and network.
Exactly. And that Saudi Business Center we mentioned, set up by Monchat, it's the physical facilitator. Bringing reps from those 7+ government agencies into one place, it just streamlines everything for the entrepreneur.
So the key insight is really the power of that consolidated entrepreneur-first approach to government support. Any region could learn from that.
Absolutely. It removes friction, saves time, reduces stress. Huge benefits.
Okay, so let's say you've navigated all that. You have your idea, your legal setup, your location, maybe some government connections. Now it's time to actually build the business.
Yeah.
Getting the right tools and, maybe even more importantly, the right people.
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk providing equipment and purchasing materials. The material notes that, an administrative project might need less stuff than, say, a manufacturing one. Obvious, maybe?
Fewer machines, more computers.
Right. But there are still crucial criteria for selecting whatever equipment you do need. You've got to consider the size and design of your space. Will it actually fit? Seems basic, but
You'd be surprised.
you would. And the project's consumption capacity. How much will it use? For planning power needs, supplies, etc.
Those practical things again. Easy to overlook in the excitement. What other factors for equipment?
Well, the obvious one. Cost. Purchase price. But also transport, installation. It adds up. Then, the speed of technological development, especially in fields like cooling or tech. You don't want gear that's outdated next year.
Future-proofing, somewhat.
Trying to, yeah. And the availability of maintenance, spare parts, after-sales service. If it breaks, can you get it fixed easily? Crucial for smooth operations. And of course, ease of use. Do you need highly specialized training? Do you have trained labor to operate it?
Right.
Finally, a longer-term thought. The value of the equipment after consumption. Does it hold any resale value? Some things do, some just become scrap. It's a financial consideration.
Okay, that makes sense for the physical tools. But what about the human element? Your sources really hammer home the power of the team. They even mention diverse teams perform better. What's the real impact if you don't have that mix? Is it just optics?
No, it's definitely not just optics. The material is clear. Recruiting and training human resources is immensely important, vital for success. And the research highlighted suggests that diverse teams, and they mention homogeneous teams too, interestingly, suggesting balance perhaps or just more capable of creative thinking. They achieve better performance.
So the cost of not having diversity could actually be less innovation, slower problem solving.
Exactly. A narrower view of the market, potentially missing opportunities. It's a performance issue. And attracting and keeping top talent. That means competitive salaries, good benefits, yes, but also real opportunities for growth. People need to see a future.
So beyond just having a diverse mix, what specific traits should you look for when building that team according to this material?
The source lays out some key criteria. Makes sense. Specialization is one. You need experts in their fields, ideally with solid experience. Passion is another. They have to be enthusiastic, committed, willing to put in the hours, especially early on.
The startup grind.
Yep. Sufficient knowledge, both theory and practical skills, to avoid costly mistakes. Self-learning is huge. Can they keep up? With their field, with the industry. Things change fast. Responsibility. People need to feel ownership, be able to make decisions within their role.
Not just waiting to be told what to do.
Right. And finally, discipline. Time management, improving service, prioritizing tasks, all focused on hitting those company goals.
Those are pretty high standards, but essential, I guess. Once you find these unicorns, how do you manage them effectively? HR planning, training?
Good question. The document gets into the goals of human resource planning. Things like getting the right number and type of people at the right time in the right place, attracting and keeping them, balancing supply and demand for labor, and really fostering motivation and commitment, keeping people engaged.
And training. How do you keep skills sharp?
For training, the sources mention several approaches. There's internal training, using your own in-house experts. There's external training at specialized centers. Remote learning, obviously huge now, online platforms. Vocational programs for specific skills. And also guidance and mentorship to help people map out their career paths within the company.
A multi-pronged approach to development. Okay, so you're building this amazing team, operations are getting sorted, but how does the outside world know you exist? And why should they care? This must be where brand and marketing come in. What's step one there?
Precisely. The sources highlight that building a strong commercial identity is just as crucial as how good your product or service is, maybe even more so initially. It's how you present yourself. Fundamental to your project's success, fundamental to all your marketing.
Commercial identity.
Yeah.
What does that actually include? Is it just the logo?
It's more than that. It covers the material or visual elements, yes, like the project name, the logo, colors, fonts, official documents, website design. But it also includes non-material elements, like maybe a specific scent in a store or just the overall emotional feeling customers get after interacting with your brand.
The whole vibe.
Essentially, yes, the whole vibe.
And it really emphasizes the psychology. Are there common mistakes businesses make here trying to create this identity?
Oh, definitely. It's vital that the identity gives the correct impression. A misstep would be, say, choosing a name that's hard to pronounce or remember, or one that has weird connotations, or using colors that just don't fit.
Like using bright red for a health spa.
Exactly. The example given is blue often being associated with health, while red is common in the food industry, restaurants, fast food. So yeah, misaligning these visual or non-material cues can absolutely confuse or even put off your target audience. You need coherence.
That's a great point. So much thought has to go into it. Once you have that coherent identity, how do you broadcast it? What's the strategy for marketing campaigns?
Right. The material draws a useful distinction here between broad marketing plans, which are the big picture, long-term strategy, market analysis, customer desires.
The overall roadmap.
Exactly. And then marketing campaigns, which are much more focused, short-term efforts, designed to hit specific goals, like launching a new product or targeting a very specific customer group, or maybe a seasonal push.
Okay, targeted strikes versus the grand strategy. Why are these campaigns so important?
Well, their importance is clear. They aim to boost customer awareness of your project, your brand, a specific product. Get noticed. They aim to boost profits by promoting what you offer. And they help explain your product's features, its advantages over competitors.
Makes sense. So how do you run an effective campaign? What are the steps involved?
The sources outline 4 key steps for a good campaign. First, study customer behavior. Really understand your target audience. What do they need? What do they like? Where do they hang out online or offline? When's the best time to reach them?
Know your audience. Crucial.
Absolutely. Second, define your marketing objectives. And these need to be clear, measurable, SMART goals, essentially. So if you're doing a social media push, your goal isn't just get exposure. It might be, get 10,000 views or 500 likes or 100 qualified leads, something specific.
Quantifiable results.
Yes. Third, choose your promotion channels. Where will you run the campaign? This has to align with that customer behavior you studied. If your audience is young, maybe Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram. Older demographics, maybe traditional media still works, billboards, newspapers, radio, or maybe targeted Facebook ads?
Depends on the target.
Always. And fourth, measure and evaluate the campaign. You have to track performance right from the start. Don't wait till it's over. Look at customer reviews online. Run surveys. Monitor your sales figures, your revenue. Are they going up? These are your KPIs, your key performance indicators, telling you if it's working.
Data-driven decisions, even for marketing.
Okay,
this is all about planning. And nothing screams plan quite like a detailed timeline. Your sources see this as a critical blueprint for action. How do you build one effectively?
Indeed. The project timeline, it's basically your master schedule. It outlines every single task, all the activities, who's responsible for what, the deadlines, everything needed to get from idea to reality. The material suggests a few steps for designing it. First, just list all the tasks, everything, big, small, government procedures, hiring, leasing, marketing prep, all of it.
Brain dump everything first. Then what? How do you organize that list?
Good question. Then you arrange and prioritize those tasks. Some things have to happen before others, right? Like getting your commercial registration probably needs to happen before you legally hire employees. There's a logical sequence.
Dependencies.
Exactly, dependencies. Next, you set appropriate timing for each task. Realistic deadlines. This lets you track progress later. Crucially, you allocate personnel to tasks. Who owns this? This avoids confusion, conflict, duplication of effort.
Clear responsibilities.
Very clear. And finally, you need to regularly review the tasks on the timeline. How's it going? Are we on track? If there are delays, address them quickly. The document even gives a really concrete example, that cooling and air conditioning center again. It shows tasks spread over 12 months. Owner does this, Mohammed does that, Ali handles this part.
Wow, very specific.
Yeah, it details everything from selecting the idea in month 1 right through to a pilot operation in months 10 and 11. That level of detail makes the whole concept much less abstract.
That detailed timeline really does ground the process. But, okay, before you commit fully, go all in based on that timeline. You probably want to test the core idea, right? That seems to be where the MVP comes in. Can you define what a minimum viable product, or MVP, really means in this context?
Yes, exactly. The concept of the minimum viable product, or MVP, is presented as a really critical tool for testing that idea before you sink massive resources into full development. So an MVP, it's defined as a product with just enough features to attract those first early adopter customers, and crucially, to validate your core idea early in the development cycle.
Get feedback quickly.
That's the goal. It's a cornerstone of Eric Ries's lean startup thinking. Gather validated learning with the least amount of effort.
Okay, but how is that different from just, like, a prototype? They sound similar.
Wow. That's a really important distinction they make, and it's easy to confuse them. A prototype is usually an initial version, often incomplete. Maybe it just shows how something might work or tests a specific function or design element. It's often not functional for end users.
More for internal testing.
Often, yes. An MVP, though, is described as an early, complete version of the core value proposition. It might be stripped down, lacking lots of bells and whistles planned for later, but it is viable, meaning a customer can actually use it to complete a core task, experience the main benefit. And ideally, the quality of that core function should still be high.
Okay, so it's functional, usable by real customers, but basic. Focus on the core value. What are the main goals of doing an MVP? And how do you even decide what makes it into that minimum version?
Right. The primary goals of using an MVP are several-fold. First, gather maximum learning about your customers, but with minimum effort and investment. Learn quickly, fail cheaply if necessary. Second, test the actual idea with real users before committing that large budget. Get real-world validation. Third, identify what features really resonate with your target market. What do they actually need versus what you think they need?
Cutting through assumptions.
Precisely. Fourth, validate the core business idea itself. Is there actually demand? And fifth, crucially, reduce waste. Waste of time, money, resources, building something nobody actually wants.
Okay, makes perfect sense. How do you determine what goes in the MVP then?
To figure out your MVP, you need to align it with your strategic business goals first. What are you trying to achieve right now? Attract new users. Test a specific hypothesis. Are your resources limited? You start by pinpointing the specific problems you want to solve for your user. Then, strategically, you define that limited set of functions to include. This is based on user research, looking at competitors, and importantly, the cost and effort required to build those features and act on the feedback you get. It's a strategic balancing act.
So it's a very deliberate process of feature selection.
Okay.
So you've planned meticulously, you've launched, you've tested with your MVP, but the journey obviously doesn't stop there. How do you keep the whole thing on track for long-term success?
Exactly. That brings us to the crucial phase of evaluation and ongoing project performance follow-up, steering the ship. The material really stresses that this requires excellence, continuous innovation, and just being constantly ready to adapt to whatever new challenges pop up.
Staying agile.
Very much so. It's about continuous, accurate monitoring, identifying roadblocks early and taking quick action to overcome them. Keep heading towards your goals. The sources outline several key aspects needed for this ongoing management.
Okay, what are those key aspects? How do you keep your finger on the pulse?
Well, first, there's project progress monitoring. This is about tracking the overall advancement of the project, setting realistic goals with timelines, and then comparing actual progress against those plans. Using tools like Gantt charts, maybe, those visual timelines, or just regular periodic reports. Are we hitting milestones? Then there's performance evaluation. You need to define appropriate criteria for success, your KPIs, key performance indicators.
The metrics that matter.
Exactly. And you regularly assess the project against these KPIs, using evaluation reports to see, objectively, if you're meeting the goals you set out.
And how do you make sense of all the numbers, all the data you're collecting?
That's the next part. Data analysis. Collecting performance data is one thing. Analyzing it is key. You need to analyze it to identify strengths, yes, but also weaknesses, bottlenecks, areas needing improvement. Statistical tools can help here, depending on the complexity. Also critical is risk management. This isn't just upfront, it's ongoing. Identifying potential new risks as things evolve, developing strategies to manage them, assessing their likelihood and potential impact, defining both preventive actions and corrective measures if a risk actually materializes.
Planning for bumps in the road.
You have to. And finally, performance improvement. This is about actively developing and implementing procedures to enhance performance. Based on all that monitoring and analysis, how can we do things better? Increase efficiency, improve quality. It often involves analyzing timelines and processes to find those opportunities for improvement.
It really paints a picture of constant vigilance and adjustment. Wow, what a journey we've covered today. Seriously. From that pretty intense analogy at the start, jumping and building the plane midair, through those 9 essential stages of getting off the ground, the business lifecycle idea, showing growth, but also that strategic decline and rebirth, navigating all the systematic requirements, the government stuff, building that crucial team, making your mark with branding, testing smart with an MVP, and then this constant ongoing evaluation and steering.
Yeah.
It's crystal clear that launching any entrepreneurial project, whether it's cooling systems or, a software app or a coffee shop, it's incredibly detailed. It's dynamic, but also potentially incredibly rewarding.
It truly is. And I think this deep dive really underscored that success isn't just about that initial flash of brilliance, that idea. It's so much about the meticulous planning, the strategic execution, the ability to adapt constantly, and building that resilient team around you.
Everything's connected.
Every step is interconnected, absolutely. And that need for continuous learning is just paramount if you want that long-term viability. You can't just launch and coast.
Absolutely. Which leads to maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to kind of chew on after this deep dive. How might proactively embracing that concept we discussed, the decline phase in a business's life cycle, and actually planning for potential new births through innovation, how might that fundamentally change your perspective on long-term business strategy?
Interesting question.
It's just a reminder, isn't it, that truly understanding a venture means always looking ahead, planning for the whole life cycle, not just focusing solely on the excitement of the launch. We really hope this deep dive has given you plenty to think about, whether you're maybe embarking on your own entrepreneurial path or maybe just gaining a deeper appreciation for those who do take that leap.